Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all here this evening. So just welcome to Mesa Life Church. My name is Chris, and my wife was just up here, and she said we're the pastors here at Mesa Life. And I just kind of want to recap what we've been talking about. We've been in a series called Following God, and we've been talking about what it means. Like, what does it mean to follow God? You know, several different people have different answers about what it's like being a Christian, or different things that they put in place in their lives to follow God. We talked about, first you have to believe in Him, and we believe based on evidence that we see. We have a revelation, a realization of who God is, and that's evidence to us. And so we start believing. And then the second part of that is it's not just enough to believe, but we also have to put that belief into action. And so we learned that faith without works, or faith without action, is dead. It's that we need to put that faith into action to make it come alive. And that action is the proof of our belief, the proof of what we believe in. And so we talked about it's like almost like two sides to a coin, the belief side and the action side. And so this week we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap up this series of Following God. And we're going to talk about priority. Now, for myself, and I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but I am not a very good flosser. In fact, I am horrible at flossing. Flossing is not something that I enjoy doing because I have a very special and unique mouth. And I know that because dentists always tell me, because I have all of my teeth. I have all of my teeth. I've never had a tooth pulled. And so I have all 4 of my wisdom teeth in the back of my mouth back there. And every time I go to a dentist, they always remind me that I have all my teeth. Like, I already didn't know that. They look in and this is the comment I always get: wow, that's a lot of teeth in there. Wow, you got all your wisdom teeth, don't you? Like, they're telling me brand new information that I've never heard. And I get it from the dental hygienist and the dentist, and so I'm not really fond of flossing. And, and the dentist asks, do you floss? And I have to tell him, or her, no, I'm really not on a regular basis. And I remember one time I went to the dentist, and I had a toothache. And I just went in for my regular checkup. It wasn't, I didn't go in because of the toothache, but my tooth had been aching for a while. So I went in there, and I'm telling the dental hygienist, kind of what's going on, and that I have an achy tooth. And so then the dentist comes in, he starts poking around, and he gets his little pick out and starts grinding in between your teeth and poking at your gums and all that fun stuff that you get from going to a dentist. And I was telling him, man, I have my toothaches on my right side over here, kind of towards the back, and he's kind of looking around, and he goes, huh. It's like, well, do you like popcorn, Chris? It's like, yeah, I do like popcorn. And he jabbed that thing into my gums, at least that's what it felt like, and yanked out this popcorn kernel. He goes, looks like you had a kernel in there. And, my next thought was, well, I haven't had popcorn in about 2 or 3 weeks. And so that kernel had been stuck in there for a while. And of course, I got the whole lecture. He goes, hey, do you floss? And I'm, well, no, I really don't floss. And so I got the whole lecture on what it was like to, floss, and how if I floss regularly, I can catch those hard-to-reach areas, right? That's always a good thing to like to say. You get those hard-to-reach areas, but my areas are really hard to reach because they're way back there. And, flossing is just uncomfortable for me. I have all these teeth, and so it takes me longer than everybody else who might not have all their wisdom teeth, and I have just enough space. They're not crowded, but it's not like I have a lot of space between my teeth, so it hurts. And they tell me the more I do it, it'll get better, it'll get easier, and it won't hurt as much, and my gums won't bleed. But I don't know. But and my wife, oftentimes has to remind me. I think she's kind of given up because she hasn't really reminded me, for a while. But she used to always remind me, hey, do you floss? And they give me special tools to reach way back there. And I just did not enjoy flossing. It just wasn't a priority of mine. It wasn't something that I placed very high on my to-do list, was flossing. Now, there are some folks, I knew a guy that flossed after every meal. So there are some people, they love to floss. They love to get all that gunk out from between their teeth. I guess I kind of like my gunk. And so I don't floss very often. And, I was thinking, maybe, I was wondering if that might be some of your experience with God or with church. Maybe it's, you recognize that, it's good to believe in God and you have Him in your life, but maybe He's not very high up on that priority list. Maybe you're somebody that, you come to church, when you can and, as often as you like to, but, kind of like my flossing, maybe somebody's got to remind you or someone has to try to get you to come to church and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll come to church today. It's not that you're against God, you're against what the church represents or anything, but just maybe it's just not on that priority list. Not as high as you would like to be. Often, I was talking with this one gentleman. This was about a month and a half ago, and I don't know him as a churchgoer, but we were talking, about our church. He was asking some questions, and I was just answering him. He kind of bowed his head down and goes, "Man, I think I just need to get to church more. That could be really good for me." And so, it's not that maybe you don't think God is good for you, or that church is good for you, but maybe, on that priority list, it just might not be as high as you'd like it to be, or you may be very comfortable with where God is and where church is on that priority list. So, we're going to take a look back in James to see what James has to say about that, because that is the third thing in following God. It's about priority. It's about where God fits in your priority list in your life. And we all have them in different spots. We all have them in different places. Some of us have them way up in the front. Some of us have them, kind of down a little bit lower, where it's more of a convenience thing than it is like a priority thing. But where is God on your priority list? Where is He? Where do you fit Him in your daily life, in your weekly life, in your monthly life, in your annual life, or even your entire life? Where does He sit? And does He even tend to fluctuate? Does He go back and forth? Is He high in some seasons of your life and low in other seasons of your life, and kind of mid-range, most of the time, where does it fluctuate back and forth? And so those are all the questions that hopefully we can kind of nail down, and you can get an idea of where He is on that list. Now, for myself, I try to put God as high as I can on my priority list. Now, I got to be honest, He's not always as high as I would like Him to be. He's not always at the very top. A lot of times I'll get out to read my Bible and I'll read a couple of verses and I'll fall asleep, because I tend to read just before I go to bed. So, obviously for myself, I probably need to adjust when I'm reading my Bible. Or, I'll go in with good intentions on, I'm gonna pray, for this amount of time, and I get about halfway through it and I think, oh man, I'm out of stuff to pray for. What do I do now? And so maybe we could figure out, where He is on that priority list, and why maybe we should try to move Him up. I think God should be at the top of our priority list. I think church should be at the top of our priority list. I should be saying that, right? Because I'm a pastor, that God should be up there. But I'll tell you what, I'm not the only one saying that God should be high on our priority list. We're going to go back to James, and we're going to be in James chapter 1. Now, James was the brother of Jesus, and I love James. James is my favorite book of the Bible. It is so practical. They call James the practical book. It is actually faith put into practice. And I love James. I love what he has to say. And so he was writing this letter to the church. He didn't write it to a specific church like some of the other books in the New Testament are. The letters to a specific church. This was just to the New Testament church in general. So we're actually in James chapter 1, and we're going to read from verse 23. And verse 23 says this. It says, "Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives us freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do." Now, looking in the mirror and forgetting your face, sometimes we can think of that as being an odd thing. But what James is talking about is priority. It's about a matter of, well, how important it is to you that you remember. Funny, memories are generated by making pathways in your brain. Okay, it's you generate a memory when something happens, like you're learning a combination code on your lock. All right, so you learn the combination code. You've just now created a pathway in your brain for that memory. All right. Now, what happens if you don't ever look at that combination? You don't ever practice it again? You'll probably forget it. And so the practice and the exercise of continuing to use that pathway to continue to do that helps you to generate strong memories. I'm about to go elk hunting. In fact, we're going to leave tomorrow to go out elk hunting. I'll be gone for a few days. We're going to be out in the wilderness. It's going to be, no contact with the outside world. It'll just be me and a buddy and just the woods, and we're going to go. We're going to get some elk, and we're going to stink. We're going to grow beards, and we're going to be coming back looking like the Duck Dynasty guys. And so you don't know what's going to happen out in the woods, right? They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, what happens in the woods oftentimes stays out in the woods as well. But this is going to be the third trip that I've gone on with my friend. And the first time we went out there, I really had no idea about the area. I didn't know where we were. We went out there once before, but I was still kind of unfamiliar. And when I realized how unfamiliar I was that first year actually I shot an elk. And so I shot an elk, and it was right before sunset. And so we're dressing out the elk, we're field dressing it, and in the dark. And then it's time to go back to camp. And so we had our flashlights, and it's like, okay, let's go. I had no idea where camp was. Not a clue. I knew it was this general direction, which probably spanned at least a 30-mile, chunk of the countryside. And so it was up to my buddy. I had to, I followed him, and I had no idea. I'm trying to figure out, where we are on this mountainside. I knew we weren't very far away from camp, but it just felt like it was taking us a long time to get back to camp. It was dark, and I'm like, okay, I'm not too sure I like this because I don't know where I am. It's dark, and we need to get back to camp because I'm hungry and I'm cold, and kind of the adrenaline from killing that elk is starting to wear off. And so that was tough. I didn't know where I was. I didn't have that memory. I didn't have that pathway in my head as far as where we were going. And then we went back out then a couple of years later to that same area. And so I knew the area a lot better. And we had looked at maps, we had talked about where we were going, and so that next year my friend shot an elk. And so same thing right before sunset. So we were dressing out the elk, and sun went down, and the thing was our batteries ran on our flashlights, so we were actually wandering around the forest in the dark before the moon could come up. But the thing is that we weren't so much afraid that we didn't know where we were. Like, we knew where we were. We knew exactly where we were. It was just a matter of, finding the best path to get back to camp. And so it just took us a little bit longer to get back to camp. But that second year, I knew a little bit better about where we were, about the paths I was going to take. And so now this year, what I've done this year is I got a little GPS unit. And with that came some software, topographical map software. And so I've downloaded the area where that is, and then I even went a step further. So you may think I'm a little bit of a nerd, but I went ahead and I downloaded Google Earth. That program, that software that where Google comes down, they take pictures of the entire world, and you can zoom in really close. And so I kind of knew the area, and so I kind of found it and zoomed in. It was really neat. I mean, I got to see exactly where I was going to be, I got to show my wife where I was like, we're going to camp right there. There's what it is. And we're talking about, you're seeing the field, you're seeing the trees, and so I got to say, oh, here's where I shot that one out. Well, here's where we shot that other one, and we kind of wandered around the woods in the dark around here, and it was really neat. So I got to see, exactly what it looked like in that three-dimensional kind of scape with, all the trees and just I don't know how often it refreshes when the satellite goes over that area, but I got to compare that with my GPS topographic, and so with my handheld unit, and so I started marking coordinates, saying, all right, we're going to be at this camp here, and I was showing her, you can turn on this computer, and you can see exactly where I'm at, because if I have this thing on, it'll track on this map here, and I'm getting jazzed, and she's just kind of sitting there going, that's nice, that's great. So, she doesn't worry about me when I go out into the woods, and so I was studying this area. I was looking, and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, a lot of times the elk like to hang out in the sun, and so they may be in this area sunning themselves in the morning, and they'll probably be in this area sunning themselves, in the evening, and you'll usually see them right before sunset. So maybe and so I'm looking at this map, and I'm going along the trail. I thought that was pretty neat. I was like, oh, I remember that part of the trail, and telling the wife, oh, this is where these guys camp here, and we kind of follow the trail up there, and I was a big time nerd for about an hour and a half one afternoon. But I started studying because I wanted to know exactly where we were going, what we were going to do, and so I started creating those pathways. It was a priority for me to know where we were at. It was a priority for me to know the area that I was going to. And so I didn't want to forget it. I didn't want to look and then forget where we were going, where we were at, and just kind of be lost out there again. That's not a good feeling to be lost. That's not a good feeling to be out there and not know where you're going. A lot of times when we forget things, what we do is it's called retrieval failure. In other words, we forget to retrieve and rehearse. They say you retrieve and rehearse. Just like that combination lock, just like with me and my maps, and the 2 or 3 computer devices I had out to compare them all together. I wanted to retrieve and rehearse. I wanted to know the area. I wanted to go out there and just kind of be like Grizzly Adams. Hopefully sporting my beard and look over the countryside and go, yep, we should go over here, because I know just right on the other side of this ridge, there's a nice little field right there. And, only because I looked at the Google Earth and I zoomed in really close to see what is around that area. But, for me, it kind of makes me feel like, I'm important and like I know what I'm talking about. And I can be the big great white hunter, and I can come back and tell all these great stories. But if we don't retrieve and rehearse, we will forget. And we're going to be just like this guy in James, where he looks in the mirror, he turns around, and he forgets what he looks like. If we don't make God a priority in our life, we're going to look in the mirror, we're going to turn around, and we're going to forget about God. That coin, that two-sided coin, if we don't make it a priority to keep track of not just our beliefs, but our works, and we make it a priority, we're going to forget. We'll lose it. And then pretty soon we'll be like, I had that coin around here somewhere, but where did it go? I'll forget about it. We'll just go on with our daily life. And we don't give it a second of thought. See, a priority is just something that is more important than others. Priority means you're just making that, you're putting a little bit more effort into that one thing. Now, verse 25 says, now intently look into the perfect law. I'm going to read verse 25 one more time. It says, but whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. See, when James is saying, look intently, he is setting a priority value on the law. He's setting that value on God. He's putting the value on church. He's saying, look intently. If you look intently into it, if you're purposeful in that, you will not forget it. You will be able to walk. You will be able to go. And what does it say? You will be blessed in what you do. You will be blessed in what you do if you make God a priority in your life. So like, say with flossing, how in the world do I make God a priority for my life? How in the world would I make flossing a priority in my life? And you may even be comfortable with your priority where God sits. Maybe God is at the top. You spend a lot of time, reading the Bible and praying and spending a lot of time with Him. Maybe there's some other things on the list that maybe go up a couple of notches. Maybe family or friends or relationships. But how is it that we make these things a priority in our life? I'm going to talk about how you can make God a priority in our lives, but you can take this and you can apply it to so many different areas of your life that you feel you may need to kick up a couple of notches and make it a little bit more important to you. So first, what you want to do is you want to start slow and you want to set reasonable goals. Now, this is where I mess up all the time. This is the one step where I usually screw up. I don't want to say always because sometimes I do a good job at it, but most oftentimes this is the step that messes me up. For instance, here we go. I want to read my Bible more often. And so, I get all jazzed about reading the Bible, and I feel like I got to jump in, with both feet. So, I'll open up and I'm going to commit to do the reading the Bible in a year. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to read the Bible in a year, but that's a lot of reading. The Bible's a pretty big book, so that's a lot of reading every day. And for somebody like myself who is not an avid reader by any means, I'm going to out myself on video and YouTube. My dad gave me a book back in July, the Phil Robinson book, Happy, 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 to read. And he's not collecting it until Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving is about 3 or 4 weeks away, and I have not cracked open that book yet. But I promise I'm going to take it hunting, and I'm going to do a lot of reading on that. And so there's a reasonable goal and an expectation I can set for myself right there. But I'm not an avid reader. So for me to try to jump in and to read the Bible in an entire year is not going to work out. I'll probably get through Genesis, maybe, and the beginning. But then there's parts of the Bible that are really kind of boring. They just talk about a lot of Old Testament laws and rules that the Israelites had to follow. There's a lot of good stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff that we can apply to our lives today from that. But as far as a read goes, when you just got to read it, 3 or 4 or 5 chapters in one sitting through that portion, that's difficult. That's tough. And so we want to set reasonable goals. We want to start slow and set reasonable goals for ourselves. So if you're not an avid reader, maybe just read your Bible once a week, a chapter a week. That's okay. That's a reasonable goal. That's starting slow. Maybe if it's for church, maybe just come once every other week, once a month. Set a reasonable goal for yourself and start slow. You don't have to be Superman or Superwoman and do it the expert way the first time. Start slow and set a reasonable expectation. The next thing is, you've got to designate time. You've got to designate time, money, energy, and the saying for this is you've got to have skin in the game. You've got to have skin in the game. If you're going to be able to follow through and make something a priority in your life, you actually have to contribute into it. Whether it be your time, whether it be your energy or money or whatever, you need to have skin in the game. Otherwise, it's just too easy to ditch out. It's too easy just to kind of push it to a side and not even think a second thought about it. And so having that commitment, doing that is important in setting priorities and moving things up that priority list, is having that commitment. The biggest one, I think the easiest one for a lot of us, could possibly be time. It could be very easy for us to contribute maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. A lot of us contribute a whole lot more than that to several different other priorities that we've made in our life. And so it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing to think that we got to have skin in the game, that we got to designate some kind of physical, tangible substance into what we're trying to make a priority in our life. The third thing is you want to change it up a little bit. All right, I would get stuck on this stage a lot too, and I would get stuck on this stage in reading my Bible. And so, I would sometimes, if I got past stage 1, and I was able to set a reasonable expectation for myself and maybe read just, a few verses a day or a chapter a day, and, I'm designating time into that, I would get bored after a while if I didn't change it and do something else. And so it wasn't the fact that it was too much reading. It wasn't that I didn't have time for it. It was more or less the fact that I just got extremely bored of the monotony of always doing it at the same time, doing it the same way, having that same whatever into that. I would get bored. I have a hard time, not getting bored in things. I'm always thinking about, well, how can I change this up? How can I do this a little bit differently? How can I make this a little bit more interesting? And so I would drop stuff because it would just become monotonous to me. And I would just get extremely bored. So change it up. Change it up. Try something different. Read your Bible a different time of day. All right? Maybe try a Live Life group this week. Make it interesting. Maybe come a little bit early to church. Maybe stay a little bit later. Do something to break up the monotony so it just doesn't seem like a chore. Because chores tend to be the same thing over and over and over again. You're like, oh, this stinks, it's a chore. So change it up a little bit. And then the last thing is probably the most important one, but I know for myself, I don't practice it a whole lot. And that is reward yourself. You've got to celebrate the little wins every time you have a little win in your life. So you reward yourself. You set that reasonable goal and expectation, and then when that is completed, you know what? Take yourself out to ice cream. Buy yourself some movie tickets. Give yourself a day off. Make somebody else do all your house stuff for you. And so, set a reward for yourself. So not only do you have an end game, but you have something to look forward to. And so then it makes that a more of a priority in your life. Because I want that ice cream when I get done with this. So I'm going to make sure to finish this. See, if I were to tell you that I'm going to send you a text in a couple of weeks, and just to kind of tell you how I'm feeling and how I'm doing, in 2 weeks, how many of you would be anxiously waiting by your telephone for that text from me just to tell you how I'm doing or just to say hello? It's okay, you can raise your hands, I know maybe some of you are excited to get a text from me, but, that's probably my own delusion. I can't imagine a lot of you just sitting there anxiously anticipating that text, especially if it's 2 weeks out. Now, what if I told you that I'm going to send you a text in 2 weeks from today, and if you get my text and respond, within a few seconds, I'm going to give you $5,000. Now, how many of you would be sitting intently by your phone 2 weeks from today waiting for my text and anticipation to respond back within seconds after I send it? Probably all of us. I would sit there and wait for my own text. I would. That's how much of a priority that would be then in my life. And so the reward is important. The reward is important for us to maintain the priorities in our life. For some of us, that reward may be just a scoop of ice cream or movie tickets. For myself, church here is a huge priority in my life. Church, Mesa Life Church, is a huge priority. And my reward, what I look forward to, what I can't wait to see, are lives to be changed. I sit in anticipation, waiting for people, expecting people to come in here, listening and hearing back about how people's lives are changing as a result of what is going on here at Mesa Life Church. Now, maybe my goal isn't that reasonable, it's maybe not that slow, and I don't plan on changing it up, but I'll tell you what, that reward in and of itself is worth more than just about all the money anywhere. That reward is really valuable to me. I sit and I wait in anticipation, looking forward to the day when we are just seeing lives change day after day after day after day, week after week after week after week. We are seeing the impact of what Mesa Life Church is doing here in the Grand Valley. Now, I know there are people already that would say that their lives have been changed. And I love it. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me moving. But I cannot wait. I cannot wait until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more lives are impacted by what we're doing. You see, another priority that we have here at Mesa Life Church is we make sure that we make it a priority that we provide an opportunity for each and every one of you to grow. To grow in Jesus. That is a priority for us. It's a priority for us to make sure that you're comfortable. To make sure that it's not an awkward experience. That when you walk in the door, you don't have to worry about what people are going to say, what people are going to ask. You can actually come in if you've had a rough day, if you've had a difficult time, and you can spend the hour that you are here just comfortable. Just in peace. You can leave whatever you have out of the door, and you can walk in and just go, ah. Sometimes we just need that. There are plenty of us that we're not ready to bring all of our junk in. If we just leave it at the door and relax, that's okay. We want to provide an opportunity for that. We want to make sure that this environment is comfortable for you. Those are priorities that we have here at Mesa Life Church. And those are priorities, those are things that in 10 years, in 15 years, in 25 years, that will never change. That you would never have to worry about coming to church and never feeling comfortable. Thinking, oh man, I hope I don't run into so-and-so because that's just going to be awkward. Or that you would feel you would not have an opportunity to grow. Either listening to the main service or joining the Live Life group. It is our priority. That is our number one priority for believers, is that this is an opportunity for you to grow in your walk with Jesus. If you're not a believer, if you're just visiting or just listening and you have really no idea what or who this Jesus is, we want to make this comfortable for you. We want to make it a place where you can just relax. You can come in, you don't even know why you're here. You may even think that if people really saw what you believe in, really saw the values that you hold, that they would run you right out. But you know what? The truth is we won't. The truth is you are welcome. And we want to make it comfortable here. We want you to be able to come in and relax. And take a load off. Because we need that sometimes. Sometimes we need to be able to come somewhere where we can just relax, where we enjoy the environment, we enjoy being here. You see, it's always talked about, whether or not we're supposed to just believe or we're supposed to just have works. That coin has generated a lot of controversy over the decades, over the centuries. Even so much to where there were folks that didn't even want James in the Bible because it talked about works. And that, in fact, our Protestant church, the Protestant church here, which is what we fall under, we may be several subcategories under the big heading Protestant, is separate from the Catholic Church for that very reason, because they didn't like the idea that you had to work. It's what you did to ensure your salvation. That they wanted to be, hey, the Bible says just believe. So rather than worrying about, where's the balance? What is that balance between our belief and our works? If we just made it a priority, then we wouldn't have to worry about that balance. Because that priority is going to sort that balance out for itself. Because it's going to be a priority for us to believe. And we will have faith, even though we don't see the evidence. And it will be a priority for us to put that belief into action, because we know that the proof of what we believe is in our actions. So it's not about balance. It's not just about balance. It's about priority. Now I challenge you to look at yourself and find out where you hold the priorities in your life. Where does God fit in your priorities? Where does your family fit? Where do your friends fit? Where do your relationships fit? And take a look and see if they are where you like them to be. And if not, shift them around. Because it's about priority. It's about the priorities we hold in our life. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much that that you had these incredible writers that wrote so long ago about how we can better follow you. Lord, I pray that you would help us to find that priority level in our life. That we'd be able to take a step back and look and say, okay, well, where are you, God? Where are you on the scale of my life? And that if you're not where we want you to be, Lord, I pray that you would challenge us to work you up the ladder. That we go through these simple steps to make you more of a priority in our life. I pray, Lord God, you just keep us safe, Lord, as we go throughout our week. We just praise you and thank you, Lord, in your name. Amen.